This is Mac OS Ken.
Apple and Qualcomm extend their deal, gearing up for today's Wonderlust event, and Apple takes the Pegasus fight to older hardware. It is Tuesday, the 12th of September, 2023. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. I saw a pretty snarky headline from 9 to 5 Mac the other day. It said, Apple's custom 5G iPhone modem has been 2 years away for years. Not true, and not snarky. The headline and accompanying story were penned in response to a Medium post midweek last week from TF International analyst Ming-Chi Kuo. That post mostly addressed new phones from Huawei and their inclusion of high-speed modems from Qualcomm competitor Kirin. Qualcomm sells to Huawei. With Kirin in the mix, Ming-Chi Kuo figured Qualcomm would feel a bit of a squeeze, one made tighter by Apple's move to its own 5G modem for iPhone in 2025. Because Apple's custom 5G iPhone modem has been 2 years away for years. I bring all of this up because of interesting news Monday from Qualcomm. In a press release so short it's hard to imagine somebody got paid to write it, the chipmaker said Monday that it has entered into an agreement with Apple to supply Snapdragon 5G modem RF systems for smartphone launches in 2024, 2025, and 2026. This agreement reinforces Qualcomm's track record of sustained leadership across 5G technologies and products. Those are their words at the end, not mine, and that was seriously almost the whole press release. Does that mean Apple's custom 5G iPhone modem is 4 years away? Yeah. It's possible that Apple will slot its own modems into less expensive phones with smaller runs before 2026. It's also possible that Apple would or will put its custom modem into whatever AR/VR device follows Apple Vision Pro. Whatever the case, Apple's done a modem deal for at least the next 4 big iPhone launches, counting the one that's happening today. Barclays analyst Tim Long is not that excited about today's iPhone 15 launch in a not-so-exciting way. Not only will the iPhones Apple hasn't announced yet be bland in his estimation, Apple's also going to have a hard time selling the ones at the high end. Starting with the phone's ho-humness, Seeking Alpha had Long saying in a note on Monday that he and his expect the iPhone 15 cycle to be similar to an S model year, average feature and performance increases with modest form factor changes. I read that and I thought, didn't we hear the same thing last year? Then I wondered whether we're hearing the same thing every year. And is that so bad? I'm reminded of last week's note from Jefferies analyst Andrew Yerkowitz. We talked about that one here yesterday. Also mentioned in Seeking Alpha, the Yerkowitz note said, Apple has been very consistent in its build quality, software updates, and in turn, market share gain. Moreover, it has also consistently showed that incremental improvements are a fair trade for incremental price increases. His note went on to say at this late stage in the broader hardware market, with incremental changes with a focus on what matters, build quality, ease of use, and camera, Apple is doing what it needs to do. In short, boring's not bad. Or even boring. Jefferies has a buy rating on Apple shares. Yerkowitz's price target on the shares is $220. Now, even if boring isn't bad, Barclays Long sees other mines on which Apple could step. While he does seem to think that Apple will raise the price of both the iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 15 Pro Max, Seeking Alpha has the analyst anticipating some headwinds as the anticipated price increases arrive at a time of macroeconomic uncertainty. If there is one thing working in iPhone's favor this year, it's how poorly things went for iPhone last year. The note says Long and pals expect low single-digit growth for iPhone units for fiscal 24 due to easier compares, though unit risks remain, according to the Analyst. Long has a neutral rating on Apple shares. His price target on the shares is $167. What I do not know about manufacturing in the supply chain is vast. Could be why I was surprised by a South China Morning Post piece that hit Monday evening in the States, Tuesday morning in the paper's home region of Hong Kong. According to the report, Foxconn's iPhone City plant in Zhengzhou, China, is ramping up hiring efforts headed into today's anticipated launch of the iPhone 15 line. It's not that they're just getting started. Rather, the piece says Foxconn is continuing to expand its workforce ahead of the release of iPhone 15. According to the report, the contract manufacturer is offering peak season signing bonuses equivalent to $880 US per person. The piece says the push comes as Apple guards against last year's supply chain issues, fresh competition from Huawei, and amid geopolitical tensions. Might Apple's most luxurious watch go away today? The idea lives somewhere between possible and likely. Last week we heard word that Apple was burning through the remainder of its Hermès leather bands, offering them at discounts of 90% off to retail employees. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman also pointed out on Twitter that nearly all of the Hermès bands on Apple's website for consumers were sold out. Ahead of today's Wonderlust event, the plot thickens. On Monday, 9 to 5 Mac ran a report saying that Hermès had pulled all of its Apple Watches and Apple Watch bands from its own website. Might be a thing, might not. The piece says Hermès pulled down all of its Apple Watch content ahead of the Apple Watch Series 8 and Apple Watch Ultra models introduced in 2022, so they could just be doing that again. Offering support for that idea, 9 to 5 Mac points out that Hermès still has listings up for its cases for AirTag, AirPods, and iPhone 12. Now, I've never been in the market, so it's hard for me to care personally about this story. Still, the whole thing is kind of interesting. There's been talk for the past few weeks that Apple planned to phase out leather in the iPhone cases that it sells. When Apple started selling off its Hermès bands, it sort of looked like another step in that leather-free direction. But that's the stuff Apple sells, not Hermès. Whatever the case, this doesn't stand to be a big deal for Apple. Luxury's great, and certainly Apple likes every bit of money it can get. Pricey as they are, though, it's hard to imagine Hermès is driving huge sales for Apple. I'll bet the margins are through the roof, though. The comings and goings of Hermès are, of course, the smallest part of what's expected today. New Apple Watches, vegan cases and watch bands. Taste just as good as the real thing. Sorry. Release dates for new operating systems, the reveal, prices, and release dates for the iPhone 15 line. These are the things for which watchers will be watching. And now, my obligatory reminder of when and where you can watch. Channels through which Apple's Wonderlust event will stream include YouTube, Apple's events page, and or through the Apple TV app, available on game systems, various streaming devices, and of course, Apple TV. It all happens today, Tuesday, the 12th of September at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, other times, other places. And if you happen to miss it, I have a feeling I will be talking about it right here tomorrow. You know, unless something big happens. Apple's Pegasus hunt has started targeting older hardware. Last week we heard word of Apple releasing iOS and iPadOS 16.6.1, watchOS 9.6.2, and macOS 13.5.2. Each contained security fixes for either Image I/O or Wallet, or both. While Apple did say that it had heard that the vulnerabilities had been actively exploited, it was a day or so later before we heard anything more. A piece from TechCrunch had the internet watchdog group Citizen Lab saying it had spotted a zero-click vulnerability. It identified that as part of an exploit chain meant to deliver NSO Group's Pegasus malware. The other vulnerability was spotted by Apple, likely when it was investigating the one found by Citizen Lab, according to TechCrunch. So we know who was behind it, we know recent hardware was protected, or would be if people updated their software. What about targets rocking older devices? Their answer came Monday. Apple Insider ran a piece saying the Cupertino company had released iOS and iPadOS 15.7.9, macOS Monterey 12.6.9, and macOS Big Sur 11.7.10. Apple's security updates page says each addresses the Image I/O vulnerability spotted by Citizen Lab. More MacBook Air units and more of Apple's refurbished stores. I told you yesterday that refurbished models of Apple's M2-powered 15-inch MacBook Air had landed in refurbished stores in Europe and the UK. Now a piece from Mac Rumors says same goes for Apple's like-new offerings in the US and Canada. The refurbished machines cost about 15% less than buying new from Apple. Mac Rumors points out that Apple inspects, cleans, tests, and repackages all refurbished Macs to ensure they are fully functional and in good condition, and Apple's refurbished products are covered by a 1-year limited warranty and eligible for Apple Care Plus coverage. Of course, the same piece points out that a lot of times buyers can get truly new Macs for less than the refurbished machines when buying from third-party resellers. Something to consider when considering. Hard to believe it's a thing that's actually happening, but it's apparently a thing that's actually happening. Apple Insider says PayPal is slowly rolling out the ability to add PayPal debit and credit cards to Apple Wallet, bringing support for Apple Pay. According to the report, PayPal announced in November of 2022 that it would be adding Apple Pay and Apple Wallet support to both PayPal and Venmo credit and debit cards at some point in 2023. 10 months later, the support seems to be on the way. That said, your mileage may vary. According to Apple Insider, there's a banner turning up on the main page of the PayPal app for some users, inviting them to add their card or cards to Apple Pay. Personally, I have not seen that banner. Additionally, when I try to add one of those cards that I have to the Wallet app, I get a message from Apple that the issuer of my card doesn't support the feature. Apple Insider suggests such discrepancies could be indicative of a slow, soft launch before a full rollout. And finally today, if you want to be part of Apple's next entrepreneur camp, you've got just under a couple of weeks to make it happen. Apple Insider ran a piece late last week saying that applications for the program are open. If you're not sure what the program is, the piece says Apple's Entrepreneur Camp offers an advanced technology lab for underrepresented founders and developers with mobile app-based businesses. The program aims to promote diversity, inclusivity, and innovative ideas in the tech industry. Held exclusively online, the camp for underrepresented founders runs the 30th of October through the 3rd of November. The camp for female founders runs the 13th of November through the 17th. Applications are due in by Sunday, the 24th of September. More info is available on Apple's Entrepreneur Camp page. You can find that at developer.apple.com/entrepreneur-camp. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.